So let's talk about the history of Georgia, a nation that has spent thousands of years right at the crossroads of empires. It's a story of incredible resilience, really defined by its strategic and, often very dangerous spot on the world map.
And, this quote from way back in the 13th century just nails it. The Patriarch of Jerusalem saw a very warlike Christian people, and that image of a fierce kingdom holding its own against much bigger powers, that pretty much sets the stage for their entire history.
And that really is the big question, isn't it? From the Romans and Persians to the Ottomans and Russians, Georgia has always been stuck in the middle. So how on earth did it manage to survive?
To really get a handle on Georgia, you've got to go way back to its origins. We're going to look at the two things that really forged its national character: its ancient kingdoms and its early and very powerful embrace of Christianity.
So, the foundation of what we now call Georgia was actually two ancient kingdoms. Over in the west, you had Colchis, famous in Greek mythology as the land of the Golden Fleece. And to the east was Iberia, which got unified around 300 BC and really became the political heart of the whole region.
Now this next part is a huge turning point. In 327 AD, Georgia made Christianity its state religion. This was an absolutely massive decision. It culturally tied them to the Byzantine Empire and the West, creating this distinct identity that would often put them at odds with their powerful neighbors for the next 1700 years.
So with that strong Christian identity locked in, the stage was set for Georgia to have its moment in the sun. After centuries of foreign influence, a unified and seriously powerful Georgian kingdom finally emerged, kicking off a true golden age.
And that turning point really kicks off in the year 1008. Under the Bagratiani dynasty, all these different Georgian lands were finally brought together into one single kingdom. This political unity was the launchpad for an incredible period of military power and cultural growth. And the guy who really gets credit for building this new powerhouse was King David IV, known to Georgians as the Builder. And believe me, he earned that title. He wasn't just a king, he was a nation builder in the truest sense of the word.
What David did was nothing short of revolutionary. He built a professional army, he just flat out stopped paying tribute to the powerful Seljuk Turks, and then, get this, in 1121 he crushed a massive Seljuk army at the Battle of Didguri. Soon after, he took Tbilisi, made it the capital, and cemented Georgia as a major power in the region.
So if David built the kingdom, it was his great-granddaughter, Queen Tamar, who took it to a whole other level. Her reign is remembered as the absolute peak of Georgia's power. Tamar was an incredible leader both on the battlefield and in diplomacy. Her armies pushed south into Armenia. She cleverly set up the empire of Trebizond on the Black Sea as a kind of protectorate state, and at a time when the Byzantine Empire was getting weaker, Georgia jumped on the opportunity to become the most powerful Christian state in the entire region.
But, as we all know, golden ages don't last forever. Georgia's prime location also made it a prime target, and a series of absolutely devastating invasions would shatter the kingdom and bring this era of strength to a tragic end.
I mean, the pressure on Georgia was just brutal and nonstop. First, the Mongols showed up in 1236 and took over. Then, starting in 1386, the conqueror Tamerlane launched eight brutal invasions that just tore the country apart. And the final nail in the coffin was geopolitical. When Constantinople fell in 1453, Georgia was basically cut off from the rest of the Christian world. So you can imagine, weakened and totally isolated, the unified kingdom just couldn't hang on. By 1490, it had completely collapsed, shattering into this patchwork of smaller kingdoms and principalities. And of course, these little states were no match for their huge neighbors, and for the next few centuries, they were dominated by the Ottoman and Persian empires. Okay, so this constant threat forced Georgia's rulers to look for a new protector. And they looked north, to their fellow Orthodox Christian neighbor, Russia. This move set the stage for the next massive chapter in Georgian history.
So, in 1783, the king of the Eastern Georgian kingdom was desperate for protection from constant Persian attacks. He signed a treaty with Russia. The deal was, Russia would guarantee Georgia's security, and in return, the kingdom became a protectorate of the Russian Empire. Sounds like a plan, right?
Oh yeah, about that guarantee, it wasn't worth the paper it was written on. When Persia invaded again, Russia didn't lift a finger. And then, just a few years later, the Tsar just ripped up the treaty, annexed eastern Georgia outright, and ended the ancient Bagratiani dynasty's rule just like that. Wow, the 20th century was just a complete roller coaster for Georgia. After the Russian Revolution, they declared independence in 1918, but that freedom lasted for all of 3 years before the Bolshevik Red Army invaded. By 1922, Georgia was forced into the Soviet Union. For almost 70 years, its identity was suppressed, until it finally got its independence back when the USSR collapsed in 1991.
And the human cost of this period, it was just staggering. We're talking an estimated 40,000 people lost in Georgia to brutal collectivization and political purges. And the truly cruel irony? The architect of many of these Soviet policies was Joseph Stalin, who was himself an ethnic Georgian. All right, so that brings us right up to the modern era. Since getting its independence back in 1991, Georgia has been on this really determined but also really challenging path to forge its own future.
A really major moment here was the peaceful Rose Revolution back in 2003. This basically swept away a corrupt government and brought in new leaders focused on reform. And you can bet that the whole experience with Russia heavily influenced Georgia's next move, a very decisive turn toward the West, with clear goals of joining both NATO and the European Union.
And this push towards the West has really defined modern Georgia's story. It's their way of reconnecting after being cut off for so long. But it has also caused serious friction with Russia, leading to the 2008 war and the ongoing occupation of 2 Georgian regions. But even with all these challenges, Georgia hit a huge milestone in late 2023 when it was officially granted EU candidate status. So here we are, with Georgia once again standing at a major crossroads. Its entire history has been about navigating the interests of bigger powers. Today, caught between its dream of joining the West and the hard realities of its geography, the question of what's next for Georgia is as important as it's ever been. So did you enjoy that quick dive into Georgian history? If you did, be sure to check out our Quick Country Histories playlist for more. And of course, subscribe to Notebook Summaries so you don't miss our next explainer. Thanks for watching.